certainly makes the Sundance Kid stand out. You know, are there probably like some old school hip hop fans that might be able to appreciate something in this? Yes. Are there some Death Grips fans that might be able to appreciate something in this? Sure. Are there like maybe even some ICP fans? Would the Sundance Kid potentially be a future performer at a gathering? I don't know. You know, I could see this maybe going over well. But the other thing I will kind of give him kudos on is with his bars and
Respond. That was really good.
all right, let's start with our first submission here. We have the Sundance Kid. Somewhere is the song. Pronouns are he, him. The genre is hip hop. And the cover art to this thing is fucking Joker mode. Like, what the fuck?
Joker
This
brain.
is the most Joker mode cover I think I have seen on any Reviewing Your Music episode. Very, very Joker mode with the straight jacket as well. This guy is crazy. It's joking time, as the Joker famously says.
It's choking time.
It's joking time. Let's give this track a listen and see what it's got. Somewhere, ba-bam.
Suddenly stops, doing simply sonic stocks, stoking stash somewhere. Stupid, slop, suck sailor saw stuck, stirring some small straw. Still, somehow snap the spine of slam, sand stepper. Sing them slots, shoddy shooter, shoot sharper. Team supervisor standing strong, shut up, swap. Super stiletto sketcher saying, shoddy simulated, so spray spawns. So suicide standoff, situation spins. Split stiff synergy strikes, support soft spot. Several synthesis said it seems so shunned. Shocker, it's a new star stallion. Scotch stage strapped. Smart sample sword. Suffering simulation subblock. Sa 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 sa. Somewhere out there. I say all the right things, yeah, in all the right places. Somewhere out there. I say all the right things, yeah, in all the right places. Somewhere out there. I say all the right things, yeah, in all the right places. Somewhere out there. I say all the right things, yeah, in all the right places. You a cashier at the bridge, talking riddles. Little did I know, there's only water under this bitch. Go figure. Sa 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 sa. Somewhere out there. Somewhere.
Okay, McFarlane, thoughts on that track?
You know, I think the biggest downfall of this track is that it doesn't necessarily know exactly what it wants to be. I couldn't help but think that hip hop may be the wrong genre for this song. Purely just my opinion, right? I do think there's something there, even though it's a little loose. Maybe if it had a different sound or a beat to go with the kind of offbeat rapping and the sudden the sudden kind of the word is leaving my brain right now, but the more passionate bars that came in out of nowhere where you scream somewhere out there. I think he's onto something, but it needs to be refined. I think maybe this could lend itself to a little bit more of a different sound. I do think the middle of the song was probably the highlight because it all kind of came together in a way that actually made sense with what they were trying to do. I don't necessarily think this is bad or wrong, or obviously the vocals need mixing because you can't even hear them in the beginning. I couldn't make out a single word in the beginning. I think they just need to kind of take it back to the drawing board and see where they kind of shine within what they did here. Because I do think there's some pretty unique and interesting ideas. Just maybe a different sound, you know?
All right, get me the next submission and I'll throw
Yeah,
some
working
thoughts
on
at
it
this.
now.
I mean, Instrumental, pretty straightforward boom bap vibe, but with some of those plucky little acoustics that are in there that sound very Wu-Tang, and kind of that droning, cycling wah 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 wah. It was a little dark, it was a little twisted. It felt 90s, it felt throwback, but it felt a little modern in how grimy and brooding and I suppose a little evil it was. I thought the instrumental set the tone for the sort of unhinged, psycho crazy guy vibe that's going on here. I guess yeah, I suppose I agree with you to an extent in terms of I hear this and I sort of see various things that it is going for, or it could potentially be influenced by, but I don't really know where exactly it's landing or where it's headed. And that may not necessarily be a bad thing. Maybe it can just safely be an amalgamation of different things. Are there probably some old school hip hop fans that might be able to appreciate something in this? Yes. Are there some Death Grips fans that might be able to appreciate something in this? Sure. Are there maybe even some ICP fans? Would the Sundance Kid potentially be a future performer at a gathering? I don't know. I could see this maybe going over well at a gathering. I think the gathering crowd might fuck with it a little bit. I guess I'll say this, for me, the biggest point of contention on the track was a lack of structure overall. You kind of did have that little refrain at the back end, but then you didn't get another verse. You didn't get anything beyond that. It just sort of went out on that refrain. I was kind of hoping for maybe a bit more at that point to kind of solidify the direction or whatever the hell this track was trying to do. And then beyond that, it's really kind of the flow, which was a bit too messy. It was a bit too loose. I think the flow had a lot of good things going for it in terms of its delivery and how expressive it was, and the modulation, the vocals were constantly changing in terms of pitch and timbre and, and everything like that. That's cool. That's engaging. That definitely grabs attention. Not every rapper kind of, spits in such a way where vocally they're all over the map like that. This certainly makes the Sundance Kid stand out, but execution was really sloppy. If your modulation is going to be all over the place like that, you really, because, jumping around in that way can be pretty disorienting for anybody trying to get a grip of a pattern or a vibe or anything that you're doing. Your flow should be at least a little bit on point. And for this, the flow was sloppy. It felt more like he was ranting than he was rapping. But the other thing I will kind of give him kudos on is with his bars. And as you were kind of saying earlier, there was something kind of lacking in terms of clarity, be it through his delivery or through the mix. One thing I did like about his bars was that there was a lot of alliteration. If he used one S word in a bar, you fucking knew that he was going to use 12 other S words in this in the next couple of bars, which was kind of interesting. There are other rappers in the past that have done similar things, Papoose is an example that I could think of, just crazy fucking alliteration, just use one C word and you throw in 15 other C words, just get a cool little, sonic effect going. And that's a neat thing. That's an interesting thing. That's a cool direction to go in as far as writing style. I don't know if it should be kind of your defining characteristic for every fucking song that you do. Not to say that that's the case for this guy, but it's a cool little exercise to try, creative exercise to try, and it could result in a good song if there was maybe some more structure here, if there was maybe some more composure to the flow, and maybe a couple of other things, but those are kind of the two biggest, I think, factors lacking for this track that we've just heard.
Yeah, you made a good point about it having some modern flares to it. And the person whose song this is, they said that they love Billy Woods, which actually makes a lot of sense.
Oh, yeah, no, Billy Woods would totally be on top of this beat.
And I do think the modernness of it and the looseness of the flow, those two things maybe clash. I'm not saying you gotta pick one or the other, but it's how do you balance this kind of not reinventing of a sound, but kind of giving it a refresh, but also put your personality into it as well, which I think is what they maybe struggle with a little bit. And I think making music like this really lends itself to a person being very vulnerable on the track. But sometimes it doesn't translate the way that they want it to, because again, this kind of music it takes a while to master. Some of the greats that we see now, it took them a while to get there. So
yeah, and if we're kind of using Billy Woods as maybe a metric here, obviously Billy Woods has a pretty loose flow that does border on just like spoken word sometimes. But like, you know, it is there. You know, I see the looseness there and maybe the similarity that we have between these two artists here. But like, I would say, you know, he's going far looser than Billy really would. You know what I mean? Maybe just sort of like reel it back, not all the way back, you know, not so far back that that you've lost all sense of that kind of free flowing feel to what you're doing on this thing, but you know, at least a little bit to where there's like a little more clarity and rhythm to what you're doing. You know what I mean? Like there should at least be like a component of rhythm, or at least, you know, I would hope so in most cases, especially if we're talking about a song that's kind of like your introductory track. Obviously, in deeper cuts, there's always room to get more experimental, get more wild, get more out there, do something completely off the fucking map, you know, to where it's like, you know, death grips, hothead, jittery beat, blah, 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 blah. You know, it's like, which is cool. That's an amazing track. But is that like the first track I would go to be like, hey, this is this group, try them out, you know? Not necessarily, you know what I mean? But, you know, whatever. That's neither here nor there. Our friend here is trying new things, experimenting, doing some stuff. There are some things that I wish were tighter and more fleshed out about it, but still, we appreciate you submitting and coming through.
Absolutely. Try to find some pretty unique producers. That might help you as well. But overall, some solid stuff.
All right, our next submission here is from Johnny Mac. Pronouns are he, him. Song title is Margaritas. Genre is alt pop.